to start. There we go. Hope you all heard that. Alrighty, so the agenda for today is we're going to go over our Mystic River Watershed climate resilience efforts, and then we'll move into a presentation from Sarah that will just give you a quick overview of what the Wicked Hot Mystic program is. And then we'll hear from Sam from iSeeChange, who will give you a training on how to use iSeeChange, what is it, and how important it is for this project in particular. And then we'll have time for question and answer. But if you do have any questions throughout the program, please feel free to put them in the little question and answer box. It should be next to your chat function. So it's different than the chat function. So again, just put your questions in the Q&A little box at the bottom of your screen. So as a background, we at the Mystic River Watershed Association work on a variety of different programs, and the Mystic River Watershed is a network of streams, rivers, lakes, all draining into the Mystic River. And so this area covers approximately 76 square miles, and for context, that's the size of Brooklyn, New York, or the size of Amsterdam. So it's actually not very large. We have 44 lakes and ponds, 21 beautiful, vibrant communities, and more than 500,000 people live within this watershed, and most of them are concentrated in the lower Mystic or the urban core of the watershed. And so we work on several different projects around water quality, education, greenways, which are connecting bike and walking paths throughout the river, restoration projects, specifically focusing on the river herring, stewardship, and of course, climate. We can't talk about environment and protecting our communities and ecology without talking about climate change. And so to that end, we at the Mystic River Watershed have been leading a collaborative called the Resilient Mystic Collaborative. And so this is a collaborative of 21 communities that is working together to solve climate resilience and climate change problems that no one municipality can solve alone. And so this is an important way for us to work regionally across boundaries, knowing that climate change doesn't understand municipal boundaries, and often we need very similar solutions to our neighbors. And so the Resilient Mystic Collaborative has prioritized extreme heat. We live in the Boston area in New England in this blizzard culture mentality. We understand that we need to prioritize including salt in our budgets every year to put on our roads in the wintertime. We prioritize making sure that heat is covered in the winter times for renters, but we don't do the same for extreme heat. And so the Resilient Mystic Collaborative got their heads together and prioritized a project working on extreme heat, which is now Wicked Hot Mystic. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah, and she's going to share her screen and talk specifically about Wicked Hot Mystic and what we're doing in this region.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So again, my name is Sarah Benson. I'm an education associate for the Museum of Science in Boston, and we are working with a ton of amazing partners on this Wicked Hot Mystic project. So as Melanie mentioned, we're working with Mystic River Watershed Association and the Resilient Mystic Collaborative. We're also working with Town of Arlington, and this is through funding through an MVP grant. So what is the Wicked Hot Mystic project? So first of all, it takes place in the Mystic River Watershed, as Melanie just described to us. And what it is it's a heat and air quality mapping project. So through this project, we have three major goals. The first goal is community engagement. We want to really make sure that we are involving the community in this process, in the data collection, in the results, and really just in the education around extreme heat. As Melanie just mentioned, extreme heat is not something that we think about a lot in the Boston area. So making sure that we are educating and spreading the word about the dangers of extreme heat, but also how we can try to mitigate this to be better in the area. The second goal is high resolution temperature data, which I will talk about in just one second. And the last is data visualization and communication. So once we get that high resolution temperature data, making sure that we are creating maps that are easy and free to use, and also layering them with other factors like tree canopy, surface temperature, income level, elderly populations, or even emergency room visits, all of whom are more vulnerable to extreme heat. We also want to find the hotspots in the area. As many of you may know or may not know, when it comes to resiliency strategies, you can't just start with the whole entire area. It's great to know exactly where those hotspots are to better understand the neighborhoods that are most impacted. So how are we getting that high resolution temperature and air quality data? So we are doing this through urban heat island mapping. This is a process that was created by Kappa Strategies out in Portland, Oregon, and also with a community engagement component that was tested by Science Museum of Virginia. So to do this, we use these temperature sensors that are on the screen, that blue PVC pipe attached to the car. And in that sensor, there is a GPS, there is a temperature sensor, and there's a humidity sensor. So in order to collect data, you attach these sensors to cars and you drive around on set transect routes or just set driving routes around the Mystic River watershed. We need at least 10 cars, maybe more, to do this work, and they all have to be mapping at the same times of day. So we'll be mapping at 6 a.m. in the morning, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and then 7 p.m. at night, all for an hour-long transect. And so all of this data comes together and they're able to model it to get a full picture of what the actual ambient air temperature is of the area. So a lot of maps show surface temperature, which is the temperature that you either feel on pavement or sidewalks, but this actually collects ambient temperature, which is the air that we breathe and feel. So it helps us understand the differences in temperature that affect our health. So in order to do this, it needs to be one of the hotter days in the Boston area, which is usually above 90 degrees. It has to be a very clear day, no precipitation, low cloud cover, low wind. So it's tricky to find that perfect day. But in the Boston area, it's usually late July, like last week of July, early August, first week of August. So we are collecting volunteers who would be willing to either drive around or navigate during that time period. And as we get closer, we'll pick the specific date depending on the weather. And we have a lot of people helping us, including the National Weather Service, to find that really perfect date. So we want to involve all volunteer scientists from 21 communities in the Mystic. Even if you don't live in the Mystic, you can help out. And if you don't live anywhere near Massachusetts, or you live in the Mystic, regardless of where you are, you can do our second citizen science project, which is iSeeChange. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this because we have Sam Harrington, who is from iSeeChange, to talk all about this. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sam.
I guess I should probably unmute myself, huh? Okay. Hi, everybody. Like Sarah said, I am Sam. I am the Global Community Manager at iSeeChange. I'm going to talk a little bit about what iSeeChange is generally, how we see people use it for heat, and like how y'all can use it specifically in this project. And then also we'll have a little step-by-step walkthrough of what it looks like to, download the app, sign up for an account, and create a post. So some background on iSeeChange. iSeeChange is a global community. We work in over 100 countries. It's people, just like you, like me, posting about things that are changing in their environment, things that you might think are strange, things that you aren't sure are strange or not, but that you want to note. So, we're specifically talking about heat, but you can post about anything if you're seeing weird seasonal changes, if your area is seeing a lot of flooding. Anything that affects the way that you live your life and you interact with the natural world is super relevant to post. We always tell people, like, nothing is too simple, nothing is too small. If you think maybe I should post this, the answer is yes. So this is happening sort of on a global level to create a record of what this period of change and environmental change and climate change looks like. But it also, we have a lot of really like localized communities that are using it to specifically gather data to hopefully create solutions to make their communities more livable. So for example, we have a group of people in Miami who are documenting flooding and a partnership with the city so that they're seeing all of those flooding posts and are able to incorporate them into their stormwater planning. And, you know, for heat, like you all are doing, you know, you have information that like satellites and models don't have. Like you really, community members really are such great sources of information when we talk about how we sort of adapt to our changing environment. And so the insights that you can provide about heat can really help local decision makers decide, you know, where do we need shade trees? You know, is this bus stop really hot? Where do we have vulnerable communities like Sarah was talking about that we need to make sure that, you know, we're doing outreach with and keeping safe during these increasingly severe, long or early, as you guys know this year, heat waves. So I want to talk about heat, and this is something, like Sarah said, you don't have to necessarily do as part of the mapping campaign. It is also something that you can do, you know, if you're the navigator while someone is driving and you are driving along your route and you want to note things along the route. Obviously, we would love for you to post those on iSeeChange so we can, you know, compare them to the map. But we see people posting about iSeeChange, posting about heat on iSeeChange in a couple of different ways. It can be one of the more like invisible threats or sort of symptoms of climate change that we experience, but it also is probably among the most dangerous. So I think it's an opportunity to get creative with how you are visualizing the changes with heat in your community. We see people talking about how their day is impacted. You know, maybe you're not going jogging during the day, maybe you're waiting till night, or maybe you're not going at all. You know, maybe you're running your air conditioning a lot and that is racking up bills. Maybe, and we see people talking about health, and that can be everything from like heat exhaustion, heat stroke to, you know, smaller things. Small, I say small, but they can have a big impact, right? Like ability to focus, irritability, the ways that heat affect our sort of behavior and mood are really important too. Housing concerns, you know, do you have access to air conditioning or a space where you can cool down, particularly overnight? Because if you don't, that can be dangerous to your health. You know, or if you do, but you're worried about other community members, that's also something that we see people noting. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we walk through posting, but you can also, if you have a weather station or a thermometer, add that sort of like quantitative information to your post as well. And then we really encourage people to talk about solutions, as well as obviously complain about the heat all you want. Like I'm on there complaining about drought right now. But if you have ideas for places where you would like to see change, we love to hear about that too. You know, if there's a public park in your area that needs some trees, post about it. I'm going to show you a few example posts to help you get a feel. This is a post from a young woman in New Orleans who was talking to her older neighbor who last summer had experienced heat exhaustion and had to be hospitalized. And so I think this post is on that sort of extreme example of how we our health is impacted by heat waves. And also it's an important record of, you know, we're concerned about people in the St. Bernard area. It's a particularly hot neighborhood in New Orleans. There's not a lot of shade trees and there's a large older population there. We also, before I move on from health so much, we had a student from, I believe, Connecticut who like analyzed her ability to focus on her piano lessons on a hot day and on a cool day. And she found like she was much less able to focus on a hot day. So I think like ways to get creative like that are always super interesting. And also, I mean, if you don't want to get creative, you don't have to get creative too. You can be very like direct. It's hot. I'm sweating. I don't want to go outside. That's fine too. We see people visualizing it in photos a lot through plants. So these are some trees that were scorched during a heat wave in the Los Angeles area. Maybe you see wilted plants. Maybe you are having to lug watering cans around. Also, you know, if you have rigged a bunch of fans in your house, that might be a good photo. If you set up a kiddie pool in your backyard for your dog, that's a great photo. And then sort of talking about spaces you go to stay cool, like Melanie was talking about, where in the watershed are you going to stay cool? Is there a nice shady park? Do you have air conditioning? Are you finding you have to go to the public library to cool down? Have you fled to the beach for an ocean breeze? Those sorts of ways that you are coping can be really valuable for the record, and also for other community members who are looking for ideas for, you know, how to cool down, because I think we have a lot we can learn together. I'm going to give everybody a minute now. If you want to download the app, if you have an Android, you'll go to the Google Play Store and search iSeeChange. And if you have an iPhone, it'll be the iSeeChange tracker in the App Store. If you don't have a smartphone, totally fine. We have a website. It is www.iseechange.org. And I'm gonna pause just for a second so people can download it if you're able. But I won't take too long so you guys don't get bored waiting for me. But feel free also to drop questions that you have in the chat. Although I can't see them because I'm in presentation mode. No, I can see. We're good. And if you do get it downloaded, you're welcome to click the take a tour button and scroll through.
While we are waiting, Sam, I have 2 questions that we can answer right now. We can also reiterate them really quickly at the end. But as people are navigating to iSeeChange or downloading it on their phones, one question is, will bikes be available for the data collection portion? This is moving back to collecting air temperature data. And the answer is we have limited amounts of sensors especially prepared for bikes. And so we'll be working on that and selecting the areas that are not very accessible via cars to make sure to prioritize the bikes for those areas. And then the other question is, how is this information that is recorded via iSeeChange going to be available for municipalities? And that's a really great question. And so one, we're communicating this information with the Resilient Mystic Collaborative. So this collaborative that is joining 20 municipalities within the Mystic River Watershed, and the municipalities have staff, the staff members that are part of Resilient Mystic Collaborative will have access to all of this information. And so it is literally my job to make sure to connect all of this information back to the municipalities so they can understand what areas they should prioritize and what their community members and residents think. And then lastly, we're also just encouraging the municipalities to sign up for, the staff of the municipalities to sign up for iSeeChange so they can see results in real time and also contribute to the data collection. So I'll bring it back to you, Sam.
Sounds good. All right. So if you have gone through the sort of tutorial take a tour section, it should put you at this sign up page. If you clicked next, it probably took you to sign in, and there should be something on the bottom that says like, don't have an account, sign up. And you'll want to click that so you get to this page. It's a pretty, general sign in, like you're signing up for a social media site. You put in your name, first name, last name. You're welcome to use pseudonyms. You're welcome to use first name, last initial, really whatever you feel comfortable with. We very much, while we sort of consider ourselves a social media platform, your privacy is like our utmost concern. So we would never push you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. When you put in your email, you want to make sure that you're using the same email that you're using like across this project, so that your data that's collected on iSeeChange and the information from this project is also connected to the SciStarter account. And then choose your password, whatever you want, hopefully make it strong. Once you hit next, it'll ask you to set your location. Again, this will never be publicly viewable. We'll never let everyone see where you are signing up from. We do use it to target when we send like email alerts or push notifications from the app alerts. So if there's a heat wave going on, you may get a push notification from the app saying like, hey, we know it's hot in your area. It's supposed to be hot all week. Don't forget to post, or an email that says something similar. We find that a lot of our community members like that sort of reminder. So they're not having to remind themselves. And then you can personalize your account. You can add a photo if you want. You can add a bio. Both of these things are optional. I love reading the bios, though. As a community member, it's fun to, if maybe to share your motivation for why you're participating in this project, or anything else that you feel like might be relevant. Cool. Once you have created your account, you'll find it takes you to something we call the actions page, which is a great place when you are just starting out on the app, but it's also a great place to come back to if you're ever feeling stumped or unsure of what to post about. We always have seasonal prompts, so this show us your summer experience. If you uncollapse that menu, we'll show you a couple of examples of different things ways that you can look for signs of climate change in the summer, things you might want to track from, drought to, tropical storms to heat, obviously heat. And you can see what's trending. We saw a lot of posts about allergies this spring, so that's what's currently there. One of my favorite things is the compare this year to past years tab, which shows you within a certain vicinity of your location what was going on, last year or multiple years into the past. And for some background, iSeeChange started in 2012, but it started as a very local project in Western Colorado. And it was a couple of years before it started to get beyond that community. But one of my teammates is from Cambridge, and we have had a long running, solid number of posts coming in from the general Boston area. So I wouldn't be surprised if you could usually go and see some far years back. And it's fun because you can say like, okay, this post is about drought. How is it different this time of year? How's it different this year from last year? And you can post about that, say, I was reminded that we were in a drought last year and I'm relieved that we are not, or we are again. You also, in this section, there's an opportunity to invite your neighbors and friends. So if you have, neighbors that you want to help organize to talk about getting some solutions done in your community, this is an easy way to do it. You click the invite button and you can, send an email, send a text message. I think you can do some social outreach as well. I'm going to go back for a second. You'll see this on the bottom left-hand side, there's a little plus icon. It says add a sighting. You click that, that will take you to this post form, which, sorry, I have to clear the chat box from my vision. You have a text input that's where you'll describe what you're feeling, what you're seeing, anything that you think is relevant. You can add a photo, it's not required, it's optional. When you click next, it'll ask you to verify your date and location. You can post from the past. So, if you have a memory of a particular weather event that you want to record, you can definitely do it. Believe it will default to your current date and time. The address, since everybody is new, should be blank, but once you've posted, it will default to the last place you posted from. But this is like, if you go to the grocery store and you think, wow, this parking lot is really hot and there's like no shade anywhere. And then you go home and you're like, oh, I should post about that grocery store parking lot. You change the time and you change the address in this section. So you don't have to be worrying about doing it on the fly, although you can, if you want to post from the parking lot, that is also totally fine. It will then, when you hit next from that, have some topic suggestions, and this is based on the content of that text section of the post that you inputted. This is from models that one of our developers made. They're a work in progress for sure. I think they work pretty good, but you'll want to double check to make sure it didn't tag something that you don't think is relevant or miss something that you did think is relevant. And if you're posting about heat, you want to make sure that heat one is checked, because then we'll make sure that it gets to the project partners, and as well it will take you to this next screen, which has a section for those quantitative details, and we'll have these critical detail sections for heat and for air quality and for storms and flooding. The heat one asks how much has heat impacted your daily activity, and it has a drop down rating that you select. If you, like I said, have a weather station or a thermometer, you could put in your outdoor temperature, humidity, indoor temperature and humidity. And we find the indoor-outdoor comparison particularly interesting and important also to understanding like community vulnerabilities of like where are people not able to cool down inside, and particularly at night. So once you have created your post, it'll appear on the sightings feed. And the sightings feed, it's really fun to explore. This is also sort of the place where it feels like a community, where you can get to see what's going on in other places and react. It'll probably initially show you within like your general vicinity posts from there, but you can, by clicking on this little pin icon, choose to see posts from around the world. You can use the search to filter the sightings feed by keyword, by topic, by another location that you're curious about. And I really encourage everyone to comment on other people's posts. So even if it's just like you saw something too, saying something like, hey, that's happening in my neighborhood as well. Or, if somebody asks a question like, hey, we just moved into a new house and there's not air conditioning and we're looking for ideas for how to cool it down. And maybe you have an idea. I find that the comments are a great place. It's fun to just talk to people about the weather sometimes, and understand like what we can learn from each other and how we can support each other through, heat waves and climate change can be quite large and scary, but when you break it down to the community level, it's like, how can we help each other adapt to this? How can we help each other collect this data so we can make our community better and even improve our quality of life rather than worrying about it decreasing. So that is the general iSeeChange. You're welcome to explore it for sure. The topics page will show you those different topic tags that we have. Maybe also give you some ideas for things to post. And we occasionally will write and report out stories based on questions that people have. That happens particularly in places where we don't have a lot of local work going on. So we can make sure that our community members who maybe are a little more isolated or aren't getting the sort of response back from solutions dedicated partners are also getting their questions answered. But who knows, maybe there's a story we can work on with y'all too. So yeah, that's iSeeChange, and I'll turn it back to Melanie.
Thank you. Alrighty, so I hope that everybody enjoyed that explanation of how to use iSeeChange. I'm wondering if anybody wants to ask any questions. You can put it in the chat. We did answer the couple of questions that were in the Q&A, so that's great. And yeah, does anybody have any more questions? I'll just wait a second, and Sarah, also feel free to chime in if you have anything to add, especially the experience that you had when you did this for Wicked Hot Boston. So Wicked Hot Mystic is an extension of Wicked Hot Boston that happened 2 years ago in Boston, Brookline, and Cambridge. So we did get some good information then as well.
Yeah, I just, part of the heat mapping we're doing gets that, data driven, but this app really allows us to understand more what the community is thinking and feeling, and actually understanding how that heat is impacting you in your neighborhood or in your community. So it's a really important second step or addition, or really just first step, I guess, to the data about learning about how heat is impacting the communities in the Mystic. And again, if you're not in the Mystic, you can still use it too. I am not in the Mystic, and I still use it all the time. But it's just a really great way for us and city planners and everyone to understand how the community is actually feeling about this issue, which is a huge thing when it comes to heat, because it really affects your public health and how you feel. I see some questions coming in.
Yeah, so again, it's really important to get that qualitative information so we are able to tell the story better as to what people are seeing, feeling, experiencing. Thank you, Eliza, for this good question. Do you want us to share this app with our followers? Do you have a hashtag that should be used? We definitely want you to share this with anyone in terms of Wicked Hot Mystic and iSeeChange for sure. Sam, do you have a hashtag?
We do not have a hashtag, but definitely share it out to anyone.
Yeah, and hashtag for Wicked Hot Mystic is simply Wicked Hot Mystic. So that would be really helpful. And tell your friends, family about it. It's something that's quick and easy that you could do to help us plan for extreme heat, as again, all of this information will be shared with the Resilient Mystic Collaborative and all of our partners who are doing extreme heat related work. And then another question from Aiden. The Heron Run last 2 years have been half of what it was in 2019. I've heard this is because of a drought. In 2016, I go out canoeing on the Mystic a lot and am concerned about this. Yeah, definitely climate change has an impact on many things, including wildlife. I don't think it's exactly clear if the river herring, like the direct linkages between that. That is a great question that I will ask our watershed scientist. However, for a little background as to how extreme heat can impact any fish community. So we all breathe oxygen in the air. Fish and other animals breathe oxygen that is dissolved in the water. And so with extreme heat, ocean and river temperatures are increasing, and that actually releases oxygen from the water column. And so animals like that breathe the dissolved oxygen in the water, like fish, are not able to breathe as well. And so that leads to fish kills, and fish kills are a common occurrence in the summertime in general, but because of climate change, they have been increasing, as well as, due to other things like excess nutrients and things like that. And so it likely is contributing. And so this is a good reminder for us to not only document what we're experiencing, but also what we're seeing changing in our natural ecosystems as well. Thank you for that question. And Carrie asked, what about collecting data on foot? Some of our neighborhood hotspots are on plastic turf on athletic complexes or rooftops. That's a great question. Sarah, do you want to answer that question?
I can try to answer that. So for the actual Kappa sensors, they cannot be used by just collecting data on foot because of the way that they work. They have to be moving at a certain, I think it's like 15 miles per hour or something like that, and we can't grab the data directly off of them. However, we are looking into more handheld temperature sensors, and you can actually add that data directly to iSeeChange. So iSeeChange, I'm sure Sam could talk more about this, but iSeeChange will automatically grab your temperature data from your nearest weather station. So you don't really have to do anything. But if you do have your own temperature sensor, or you do have a sensor, an indoor sensor or outdoor sensor, you can add that field within your post. And you can have a more exact temperature of what you're actually seeing at that spot. I think we're working a little bit on trying to get more of those sensors that you can pull data off directly, but we don't have those as of yet. Another thing that we are doing though is air quality sensors. So we are going to be using the air beam sensors. And for that, we may have some on-foot walking air quality sensor routes as well. We're still working through those exact details. But for those as well, you can also add air quality data to your iSeeChange posts too. You can also add rain data, and what else, Sam? There's more. You can really add anything if you have sensors at home or want to purchase sensors.
Yeah, I also will add, especially with temperature, obviously, like if you can get the official scientific grade sensor, that's the best. But we also find heat, even if you have a little cheap temperature sensor that maybe isn't super accurate to what the temperature is, you can still use it to compare different places. So it will be accurate against itself, right? So if you want to compare inside or outside, or if you want to compare the shade of a park versus the sun of a park, you can say, well, there's this temperature difference between these places. So I do encourage people, if you can find sensors that are, accessible and within your budget, use what you got for sure.
Thank you for that. And another question, are there specific types or brands of weather or air quality sensors you guys recommend?
That is a great question. I believe that I'm not the sensor expert on the team. I believe, and I will send Melanie confirmation of this so she can send it out to all of you, but I believe that the weather stations that we recommend are Osprey weather stations, and they collect rainfall data as well as temperature data and humidity. I don't know about air quality.
Yeah, so what we're using is AirBeam, and what others have used in the Boston area to collect air quality is Purple Air. And so those are two, I haven't personally used them yet. AirBeam's the first time that I will be using them this summer, but they're both good quality, air quality temperature sensors. And actually, one last thing to add about the previous question about turf fields and measuring the air temperature there is make sure to take a picture of that and put it on iSeeChange. So saying here is an area that is extremely hot because of these turf fields. What would be better here are, you know, trees or natural grasses, et cetera, that it can actually absorb the heat instead of keeping it there and contributing to the urban heat island effect. So great. And then we have one more question in the Q&A. If our city is planning to remove a grass park, a pool area, and install artificial turf, which is very hot, how can this project build an argument for rethinking the project? Well, there are several things. And so again, we're providing that qualitative data and the quantitative data. So the story as well as the numbers. And so if we can say, this is a hotspot, this area of turf is a hotspot, and compare it to a park area close by, or you know, in a similar area, that can really drive the case for municipalities to rethink that. However, as we know, we can't just use data and stories, we need public support. And so that is when we need support from the community to call your representatives or call your city officials and say, hey, I saw this great presentation and I saw this great data that was presented to me, and this area is actually hotter because of the turf fields, and you should keep the park area. And so we are here to provide the information and to advocate, but we also need to build momentum from community residents who are experiencing that. So that way, municipalities and elected officials know what their constituents want and need, and you know, we move forward in that way. That's a great question. Alrighty. I will wait a second for one more question, and then if not, we can wrap things up. Sarah, do you have anything to add, or Sam, do you have anything to add that you can think of?
I will add, if anyone has an IR temperature gun that you may use to take your own temperature, you can use that in some situations. For example, if you're trying to measure the actual temperature of turf, that's going to get your surface temperature. That's not quite going to get your air temperature, but that's still valuable information to have, especially if you're trying to look at the temperature of grass versus turf. Those are pretty cheap on Amazon. They did skyrocket in price for a little bit because of COVID, but I think they might oh my gosh, the price might have started to go down a little bit. So that is also an option for cooking too, if you want to use them. But that can be an option if you don't want to buy a really expensive temperature sensor.
Sure.
I'll try to find the link and put in the chat.
Great. Well, I will leave us with a call to action. And so remember to download iSeeChange or use it on your desktop and post many pictures, especially during the extreme heat waves, which are days above 90 degrees. And if you would like to help us collect air temperature and air quality data, we have a training next week on June 24th at 5 p.m. So almost a week away, and you can register here. I put in the link in the chat. And then also, if you haven't filled out our volunteer interest form, please do fill it out. It is also in the chat. And with that, I will close our webinar. Thank you so much. We will be posting this on our social media, and all of the folks who registered will receive the recording, so that way you can rewatch it or share with your friends. Make sure to get your family and friends involved, as well as make sure to help out your neighbors and family members, especially young children and elderly during extreme heat waves, and check in on them. Make sure that they have fans, make sure that they have ACs, or are able to access another cooling area throughout the time. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you. Oh, I see, I didn't put in the right link. We will find it, and then we will close out.